and looking for answers and trying to discover things and really dive into things, it's going to augment what you're doing. And that's where we're at today. So really about AI and ML is in unison with lab and data automation. And you heard it today, it was a great talk about that lab in the loop concept of going through the process, taking the output and applying AI and ML, and then going and doing it again and making it better and better. And that's kind of part of what my talk is about. So let's just look at some lessons learned, because honestly, I get caught up in fixing things. And a lot of it's culture. It's not technology, right? So there's a lot of cultural lessons over the years. So in the 90s, the focus was robotics and throughput, big robotic arms, getting things through, getting it done, faster assays, isolated systems. Lessons learned, integration and usability really matter. 2000s come around and we're into the electronic scientific method capture with an ELN. We're into LIMS systems where we're trying to deal with samples and request management, things like that. We get some better data capture, but we're still siloed. And that's a problem in today's world. So we need interoperability, and we don't need application-centric approaches that were like they were then. Now we need data-centric approaches. And then 2010s, we have end-to-end digitalization. We're starting to unify workflows. The whole concept of fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable data. And that's a miss. It's not just data, it's processes, it's automation, it's instrumentation, you keep going. And then the lessons learned were, ooh, contextualization. Ooh, how are we gonna handle all this orchestration? And then, oh wow, we totally missed the culture part. We could have gotten so much out of this if we brought more people on board or had the change management in place to make that work better. So here we are in the 2020s. We have AI ML augmentation, predictive autonomous labs, and then automation feeds intelligence and vice versa. That's just a lesson learned today of having these closed lab loops, having better design of experiments augmented by AI and ML, and actually iterating through things and getting it done better. So there's 10 things that if you're, and I don't know the audience, but I suspect there's a lot of heavy, hardcore automation engineers and experts and stuff in here. But if you're in here thinking that I've got to get into an automated lab or we've got to change things where I work, just know these 10 things. Culture change is the first thing you must own and have. If you do not have the right culture for anything in the lab, whether it's lab automation, AI, ML, data, process capture, you're gonna fail. And it's miserable, it's painful. But keep your eye on the prize. Model quality data in today's world is where you wanna be at. If you don't have model quality data, it's like having water in your gas, and you're gonna have problems with your efforts. Integration is still the most costly bottleneck. There are companies or representatives from companies today that are doing incredible jobs of bringing things together and integrating at a much higher level. Not everything should be automated, and don't automate bad processes. If you haven't done business process mapping in your lab before you automate something, it's gonna hurt you. You need to know down to the level of detail what's happening in that lab, from a process, from a data, from an instrument, from an application, from a service perspective. Otherwise, you'll make mistakes when you go to do your automation. Usability and experience will drive adoption. Contextualization augments that model quality data. The more contextualization you have, the more data standards, et cetera, the better off you're gonna be. Build in flexibility where you think you need it. Return on investment is much more than just FTE time here. We're talking about a much larger return on investment with all the things that can happen and will happen. Capture everything. And if you say, well, we can't capture everything, capture almost everything. And then understand all the personas in the labs, because you're going to want to understand how Is my automation a service? Is my automation gonna be walk-up? What is that method gonna be like? And you really need to understand the different personas that are either participating, are gonna be using, overseeing, funding, whatever it is, just know who everybody's dealing with. So again, for the people in the room, this is probably old hat for a lot of people, but here's some facts and data. 3 to 10 times faster equipment throughput, high throughput and content screening, sample prep, analytical workflows as examples, 80 to 90% reduction in manual pipetting and plating time. I know I don't have a lot of time here, but this is why humans are coming out of the lab in many situations, because the machines are outperforming humans big time. And we can't afford all the mistakes, we can't afford the slowness, we can't afford the bad attitude, whatever it is, automation is making humans become extinct in some of these areas. 24/7 operation enables round-the-clock productivity, no downtime no human downtime. And then an example is an automated LCMS sample prep can cut prep time per batch from 8 hours to less than 2 hours. You can use machine learning to know how to start a column separation or whatever that may have taken you weeks before, but now can take you 40 minutes to get to the right thing and get it done much faster. So all of these tools are really, really helping scientists get their job done faster and better. Error reduction, 50 to 90% in transcription, labeling, and metadata. So again, humans can't compete with this. Automated instrument data capture ensures 100% traceability and eliminates manual data entry delays. Again, that traceability is very critical in today's world. Real-time data streaming reduces post-experiment cleanup curation by 30 to 60%. Resource utilization. Equipment utilization often rises from 40 to 50% manual to 80 to 90% automated due to smart scheduling and workflow orchestration. Staff time can shift from low-value operations to data analysis, design of experiments, and quality interpretation. And it's usually 1 to 2 FTEs free per 2 to 4 automated work cells as a benchmark. Again, this can help anybody in this room if they ever have to justify why they're going to go and buy certain or step into automation. Reproducibility is still a huge problem, even in industrialized science today. It's actually a huge problem. And this is, again, where automation comes into play. It starts to drive that reproducibility and quality. The variability goes down, improving reproducibility by 90% in assays and analytical results. Digital sample tracking and barcode systems nearly eliminate lost or mislabeled samples. I know of a biotech in Boston that went out of business ultimately because they couldn't find their samples. They had their sponsor company come in and they went to show them where they were, and they were so embarrassed. I was there. They couldn't find their samples. The company invested hundreds of millions of dollars, and their lack of informatics and their lack of what I call data hygiene ultimately sunk that startup. Automation logs support GXP and regulatory compliance by automatically documenting a reaction. These things really come in handy many, many times. So integration in AI ML enablement. Fully digitized and automated labs generate AI-ready, structured, fair data, what I like to call model quality data. Experiments become metadata-rich, enabling predictive analytics and model-driven decision loops. We heard it in the last talk. It's here today. If you're not working like that company, you're probably not going to be able to compete doing things the old way. And this is where people are starting to worry. Some of the medium-sized companies are really worried that they're in the dark ages doing what they do, and we have these awesome startups coming and doing it in a much smarter and faster way. So 30% to 50% faster experiments to insight cycles. Once lab automation integrates with ELNs, LIMS, and next generation SDMSs. So that is the Ganymedes of the world. They're here, Zonto, Tetra Science types of companies. So again, just some summary of some efficiency gains. Experimental throughput 3 to 10 times faster. Manual handling reduction 70 to 90%. Data entry errors down 50 to 95%. Equipment utilization up to almost 90%. Time to result down 30 to 60%. Regulatory readiness and reproducibility up 80 to 95%. And then, and this is a huge deal, because when it's not this in companies, they can spend up 40 to 60% of their time in a data wrangling environment, but they can also end up repeating up to 50% of their experiments, because it can't make heads or tails of what they did. And then that AI ML data readiness significantly improves structured and standardized data, what I like to call model quality data. So the informatics have evolved over the years as well. I like to think we're still in our infancy when it comes to scientific informatics. We should be having confidence levels in our data. We should be having understanding how often that piece of data has been used in different models, different decisions, and things like that. All of that will drive a whole nother level of metadata in scientific informatics. But entity registration, working with uniquely identified either biological entities, chemistry entities, etc., knowing that that method or that recipe or SOP management system is spot on and it's versioned and people are working through that. The fair data environments that can handle all of the research data, the metadata contextualization, the data standards, the ontologies like the bioassay ontology, and the culture of data and process as an asset. So today, it's starting to stick that data and process and automation as an asset is really important from a cultural perspective, and that companies need to think this way. Scientists have to stop thinking about it's my data, and I don't need to put a conclusion in my notebook because, man, I know what it did. I mean, I hear this every other week. Advanced and integrated automation, orchestration, becoming a buzzword. Design of experiment and HTE adoption is dramatically improving. This has been lagging and failing for a little while, I'd say for the past 10 years. Better multiplexing and advanced data handling. So where things are going and where we're working with companies is we're actually trying to fill the void in AI and ML by actually helping clients produce scientific data factories where they can produce extra and void-filling model quality data. In our past 5 current state laboratory assessments, we've heard much of the same thing, and this poor culture and unstructured R&D leads to poor data and process hygiene. The notebooks are a disaster. They're usually paper on glass. Application centricity, not data centricity. Missing scientific data process decision strategy. I won't ask anybody in here who works for a company to raise your hand and say, do you have a written scientific data strategy? And most people don't. And it's actually unbelievable in 2025 because it's like a rudderless ship. Like, oh, you can go do whatever you want. Oh, we're gonna hire this hotshot and we're gonna give them everything they want. We're gonna give them people, building, drive them back and forth to work. They can do whatever they want. And they leave 3 years later, and the company has a complete 90% of the time disaster on their hands because they don't know what to do with all this stuff. So this is a huge problem. Missing AI strategy. If you don't have a scientific data strategy, you typically don't have an AI strategy either. And again, missing business rules and governance, like just simple nomenclature in the labs, missing. Don't know how to name samples. We don't have unique identifiers for processes, for all types of things. Typically, their capability maturity curve score is less than 3. It's usually between 1.5 and 2, which means they're not even repeatable. And these are companies that have been around for more than 50 years. Less than 10% fair data and processes in these organizations. So if you can't find the data, you can't access it, you can't interoperate with it, and you really can't reuse it, the 80% of the data's dark or trash data is actually really real. A couple companies have made some significant efforts over the past 10 years. And then the science isn't reproducible. Greater than 50% of the time, you could not, as an expert colleague, take that notebook and go and reproduce that experiment based on what was put in the UN. So it's happened in academia, but it's also in industry in many places. So why build a scientific data factory? You need more model quality data for your science. You can drive near future in silico first science better, faster, and stronger. You either can utilize your current automation more, or you can now justify the spend of new automation. And then a well thought out data products could drive more insights and discoveries at your organization. And I'm not just like making this up. I was thinking of Strange Brew there, just because I'm not making this up, we're actually doing this. And so this is why this is really important. If you're only utilizing your automation in your company, say 40% of the time, figure out how to build a data product or a scientific data factory with that remaining 60% and get high value out of your current equipment and efforts. And with that, that's it. I went through fast and I have a lot of time.